on today's episode of Timeless Wisdom.
Jews who have no Judaism in their lives, maybe even totally secular, but they want their kids to marry, they insist their kids marry a Jew, and then they wonder why their kids think they're racist. Because it is racist. That's why. It's a racist belief. Unless if it's a religious belief, it's not racist. I understand religious Jews want their kids to marry Jews for religious reasons. Totally understood. But most Jews aren't religious, and they still want that. Why?
That's coming up on Timeless Wisdom with Dennis Prager.
We live in a time where the moment you question the narrative, you're told to stop thinking and start complying. That's why what Angel is doing matters. With eye-opening documentaries like Thank You, Dr. Fauci and RFK Legacy, Angel is willing to explore the issues others avoid. In a culture shaped by gatekeepers, Angel offers something rare, a platform for truth-seeking storytelling that isn't constrained by fear or conformity. Go to angel.com/Prager, join the Angel Guild, and watch these films today.
Welcome to Timeless Wisdom with Dennis Prager. Hear thousands of hours of Dennis's lectures, courses, and classic radio programs. And to purchase Dennis Prager's Rational Bibles, go to DennisPrager.com.
And finally and brilliantly, most unpleasant, their invisible God not only insisted on being the one and only and all-powerful God, creator and Lord of everything and the only rightful claimant to worship, he also developed into a moral God. And the Jews have suffered from their own invention ever since. But they have never given it up, for it is, after all, what makes the Jews Jewish. Every synagogue should read Ernest von den Haag's description every year to remind Jews who we are. Maybe it often takes outsiders to do that. When I was in the Soviet Union, the age of 21, 1969, and I was there, as I think I mentioned to you, Israel sent me because they couldn't send Israeli Jews, so they sent foreign Jews because there were no relations between Israel and Soviet Union after 67. We were sent to bring in Jewish items and bring out Jewish names. I was sent because of my knowledge of Russian and Hebrew and Judaism, so I was a good candidate to be sent. I was sent for a month for the High Holy Days and a little extra. And I smuggled out a song, and the song went, some of you are Russian, "Nie boюся никого, кроме Бога одного." Now remember, this song, which I will translate in a moment, this song, which I brought out, was sung by secular Russian Jews against whom the Soviet government had created the most systematic effort to extinguish Judaism in Jewish history. Obviously, Hitler wanted to exterminate Jews in Judaism, but he largely exterminated Jews of Western Europe and Eastern Europe, but not of Russia. But he was from 39 to 45. But from 1917 till the end of the Soviet Union was a systematic effort to crush Judaism. Not to commit genocide, but to extinguish Judaism. And I thought it was successful. And here I was with hundreds or thousands of Jews on Simchas Torah in Moscow. And they would smuggle me their songs, and this was one of their most famous. I don't fear anyone except for God, the only one. Is that mind-blowing? In atheist Soviet Union, for secular Jews to sing, I don't fear Lenin, I don't fear Stalin, I don't fear Brezhnev, I only fear God. That's what was handed to me by no yarmulke wearing, no Hebrew knowing, no Torah reading Jews. So I saw Jewish history alive. Chosenness has created another and unbelievably important thing. Evil focuses on Jews. Again, something I tell everybody because it's so true, and every time I say it, it reinforces the amazement to me. If you know the Passover liturgy at the Seder, we say, Shebechol dor vador kamim aleinu lechalotenu. In every generation, somebody arises to annihilate us. Not to oppress us, not to enslave us, to annihilate us. That was written about 2,000 years ago. Wow, that's hard to believe. Every generation, come on, rabbis, it's a bit of an exaggeration. And I remember as a kid thinking, they're wrong. It was true in my parents' generation with Hitler. It's not going to be true in my generation. And then Ahmadinejad announces this week at the United Nations that Israel should be exterminated. Every generation somebody arises. And now let me ask you a question. Do the people who hate us, are they generally a nice group of people who just happen to hate Jews? Now, if they were, then we would have to rethink our role in the world. Maybe it's wrong. Evil doesn't concentrate on hating Jews. Nice people do. But nice people don't hate Jews. It should go without saying, but I'll say it anyway. And I tell non-Jews on my radio show, 95% of whom I presume are not Jewish. If you don't understand that the desire to exterminate Israel is the evil of the world today and you're next, you're a fool. You are just a fool. No one starts and ends with Jews. They start with Jews and then they move on. 49 million others died because the Gentile world, if you will, of the West thought Hitler was only a Jewish problem. Okay, it's too bad. It's really sad about the Jews, but it's the Jews' problem. It's Israel's problem. Iran is Israel's problem. No, Iran is humanity's problem. So evil focuses on the Jews. Nazism, communism, now Islamism. Not all of Islam, but too much of it. One other thing that proves to me the chosenness is the centrality of Jews. The United Nations has spent more time talking about Jews, talking about Israel, specifically the Jewish state, than any other issue in the world. Israel is the size of El Salvador. I met an El Salvadoran Jew at my regular minyan just last week. And I told her, Israel, you're bigger than Israel? She said, I come from a very tiny country, El Salvador. As a woman who converted to Judaism who came from El Salvador. Because I interview members of my minyan just for the other members of the minyan periodically. And it was just fascinating. So I come from a very tiny country. And El Salvador, well, your country is bigger than Israel. She was stunned. Everybody's stunned. My favorite joke on this is early days of my lecturing. I think I was still in my 20s. My first trip to Kentucky, I was going to speak to a Jewish community in Louisville. So I was sitting next to a woman, non-Jewish woman, asked, where are you from? And I think I still hadn't even moved here. I think it was from New York. So what brings you to Louisville? I said, I'm going to speak to the Jewish community. Oh, really? Wow. So she started talking about Jews, and it was clear to me that she thought there were a lot of Jews. And so I just decided to ask her this question. I'm curious. I think at the time there were 250 million Americans. So I said, there are 250 million Americans. How many Jews do you think there are in America? So she thought for a moment, said 50 million. So I said, well, actually 6 million. And then she thought for a moment and said, they must all live in Kentucky. Makes sense. Why are they so prominent in Louisville if they're so small? And so the Jews, there's something involved in Jewish history that isn't rational. That is, I believe, divine. And it is that God has a plan for this people. And why do you think Christians support Israel? You wake up a Christian who supports Israel 3 a.m. It's when they're going to be at least in control of what they say. Why do you support Israel? Because it says in Genesis, God will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. Can I go back to sleep? That would be it. That is what they say. And they're right. God does bless those who bless the Jews and curse those who curse the Jews. The most blessed country in the world has been the one that has most blessed the Jews, called the United States of America. The most benighted place in the world is the Arab world, and the Arab world is the place in this world today that most curses the Jews. If you think it's a coincidence, you're allowed your opinion. I don't. Jews play a central role in history, not have anything to do with the Jews, but because of God. So it brings me to the final point. What are we here for? We have a mission. We're the third attempt, right? Adam, Noah, Jews. To bring the world to the God who demands goodness. That's why I regard Christianity as a divine vehicle. I don't believe in Jesus, but I believe that God provided a vehicle for vast numbers of non-Jewish people to come to the God of Israel, to the Ten Commandments, and to the Bible, through the vehicle of Jesus of Nazareth. That is this Jew's view of the divinity inherent in Christianity. Christians who don't bring Christians to ethical monotheism and to the God of Israel, okay, they're failing their mission, just as plenty of Jews failed their mission. But that is our mission. Very few Jews embark on it. Our message is to bring the world to the God who demands good behavior and judges it. That, however, has not been what Jews have been doing for the last 2,000 years. Number of reasons, and this is critical.
This episode of Timeless Wisdom will continue right after this.
We live in a time where the moment you question the narrative, you're told to stop thinking and start complying. That's why what Angel is doing matters. With eye-opening documentaries like Thank You, Dr. Fauci and RFK Legacy, Angel is willing to explore the issues others avoid. In a culture shaped by gatekeepers, Angel offers something rare, a platform for truth-seeking storytelling that isn't constrained by fear or conformity. Go to angel.com/Prager, join the Angel Guild, and watch these films today.
Now, back to more of Dennis Prager's Timeless Wisdom.
Number one, with the ascent of the church in the Roman Empire, Jews, and with anti-Semitism in that time, which lasted a long time, unfortunately, Jews in the Christian and Muslim worlds became preoccupied with surviving. When you're preoccupied with surviving, if you have cancer, you're preoccupied with chemotherapy and radiation, not with influencing other people with regard to your values, because you can't influence anybody if you're dead. So Jews became preoccupied with survival. That is the first death blow to the sense of mission to humanity, which Jews did have until the ascent of Christianity in Europe. It says in the New Testament, Paul says Jews would sail seas, cross continents to make one convert. Because the only way you could be an ethical monotheist before Christianity was to be a Jew. A tenth, according to Salo Baron, the greatest Jewish historian of the 20th century, the Jews comprised a tenth of the Roman Empire. That is how vociferously Jews, you didn't have to become a Jew to be saved. Jews never held that. You had to be a good person to be saved. But Jews did advocate and were a good model. The Sabbath, in particular, was a very, very powerful thing. Wow, take a day of the week off. You're not just an animal who works 7 days a week. It's a very powerful message. One God, not a pantheon of Roman gods or a pantheon of Greek gods or pantheon of Egyptian gods. This was very appealing to intellectual and rational Roman, Greek, and other what we call pagan citizens. Jews did have a mission. Then, for 2,000 years, Jews became preoccupied with survival. Even when we don't have to be preoccupied with survival, we are. Like now, we are preoccupied and should be with Israel's survival, but we can certainly, in America at least, do a vast amount more than just be preoccupied with Israel's survival. And we are preoccupied with our own. I wish I remembered. Somebody called me this week and said they remember a speech I gave 25 years ago, which I was very complimented. I said, "What did I say?" So they said, "You said you have a nightmare. The Arabs declare a peace with Israel. Israel finds oil, and all of Soviet Jews get out of the Soviet Union. Then what are Jews going to do for a living?" Then I said to the person, I got that from Arthur Hertzberg. who many of you may not know, and it was a man I differed with very often, but he was a brilliant Jewish thinker. And it was actually Arthur Hertzberg's nightmare, which I was citing, but the person remembered me, so I got all the credit for the last 25 years. But I am very strict about citing sources, and it was his idea. And he was right. He wrote this about 25 years ago. I have a nightmare. Israel finds oil, the Arabs sue for peace, and Soviet Jews get out of the Soviet Union. What is American Jewry going to do? Good question, isn't it? What if we didn't have to worry at all about Israel was as secure as Guatemala or as every other country on earth and was rich because it found oil? Then what, and since Soviet Jews are out and Ethiopian Jews are out, what are Jews in America going to do to be Jewish? It would be a huge problem because we feed on survival. But the purpose of Jewish life is not to survive. That's the purpose of an ant's life. It's important to survive, but it's not the purpose of your life, and it's not the purpose of Jewish life. That's a biological imperative. That's not why we're here to survive. We're here to touch the world. So the first problem was we got preoccupied with survival. Second problem, which pre-existed that, Judaism became, forgive me, too immersed, preoccupied with laws. Laws became, in my view, this is one Jew's view, but I think a lot of you share it or you wouldn't be here today. Law became not a vehicle to our mission, but an obstacle to our mission. Because the laws were created in large measure to keep Jews away from non-Jews, lest they assimilate. Don't drink wine with them. Don't even drink wine that they touch. Don't eat with them. Don't drink with them. Don't socialize with them. Stay away. Be preoccupied with more and more and more laws. And so law, which was meant to be a vehicle to God and a vehicle to being a light into the nations, became a vehicle to removing ourselves from the nations. That's what it became. I am convinced that was the original appeal of Jesus. Yes, I'm not here to abolish the law, but hey, wait a minute. Let's get perspective on what it's for. I understand that. Makes perfect sense to me. That's exactly what has happened. I gave you the example, right? I gave you on Rosh Hashanah the example of what happened in my son's synagogue, right? With the man who was going to blow shofar. Is that correct? I didn't? Did we spend Rosh Hashanah together? It's a painful story, and I have to couch it in the following. The Orthodox are the most God-centered as a group in Jewish life. Okay, I want to just say that at the outset, and many of them do magnificent work. But here is an example, not of bad Orthodox, but of what law can do to pervert what we stand for. My son is Orthodox. At his shul, which it's not a year-round shul, I don't believe, or it's basically Orthodox Jews getting together for services. So there wasn't an official rabbi of the shul who might have adjudicated in this matter. The man who was about to blow shofar at the synagogue was approached by someone quietly who spoke to him for a moment or two, and it was clear what he said. You're not going to blow the shofar. They gave it to somebody else. He was humiliated, and it turns out it was because somebody's there didn't think he was a Shomer Shabbos, that he didn't keep Shabbos properly as an Orthodox Jew should. So I asked my son, given that virtually everybody there is Orthodox, he didn't drive on Shabbos. He said, are you kidding, Dad? One of the two things that, I don't remember the other, but it was on the same level, was that he had his little child press the elevator button on Shabbos to their high floor in their apartment building. that is when law gets in the way. I can give you dozens of examples of laws getting in the way of our mission, certainly, and even, in my opinion, goodness. Because humiliating somebody is a much bigger sin than pressing an elevator button in Judaism. There's no comparison. And every Orthodox Jew would acknowledge there's no comparison. And yet he was humiliated because of a button pushing in the elevator. So what? So we had a double whammy. We got preoccupied with survival and preoccupied with law and preoccupied with staying away lest we assimilate. So it is better not to associate with non-Jews as little as possible lest we intermarry. You think it's new, the fear of intermarriage in modern America? This is thousands of years old, which, by the way, I've always have found very odd. What kind of belief do we have that we have a beautiful way of life, a beautiful religion, if we're so afraid that if we intermingle with non-Jews, we'll stop being Jewish? Do you understand what it says about Judaism? Did it ever occur to anybody, if their daughter or son is dating a non-Jew, that perhaps we will offer something so beautiful the non-Jew might want to be Jewish? It doesn't occur to almost any Jew. Oh, they're interdating, over, it's over. If it's over, it was over before they interdated. It would be over if they married a Jew. Intermarriage is a symptom, not a cause. But it doesn't occur. It doesn't occur. Maybe we have something beautiful and the non-Jew might actually like it. It doesn't even occur to Jewish life. So I'll never forget. I mean, this is, I'm not a kid anymore. And boy, I remember thinking in my 20s, isn't this racist? Jews who have no Judaism in their lives, maybe even totally secular. But they want their kids to marry, they insist their kids marry a Jew, and then they wonder why their kids think they're racist. Because it is racist. That's why. It is. It's a racist belief. Unless if it's a religious belief, it's not racist. I understand religious Jews want their kids to marry Jews for religious reasons. Totally understood. But most Jews aren't religious, and they still want that. Why? Maybe we have something beautiful that non-Jews might actually think, I can handle that. Sounds nice to me. Sounds elevating. But we don't think that way.
This episode of Timeless Wisdom will continue right after this.
We live in a time where the moment you question the narrative, you're told to stop thinking and start complying. That's why what Angel is doing matters. With eye-opening documentaries like Thank You, Dr. Fauci and RFK Legacy, Angel is willing to explore the issues others avoid. In a culture shaped by gatekeepers, Angel offers something rare, a platform for truth-seeking storytelling that isn't constrained by fear or conformity. Go to angel.com/Prager, join the Angel Guild, and watch these films today.
Now, back to more of Dennis Prager's Timeless Wisdom.
So we don't think that way in the micro, and we don't think that way in the macro, that we have a mission to humanity. So I conclude with the Orthodox are preoccupied with exceptions like Chabad. Chabad is the first Orthodox group in 2,000 years to think it has a mission to humanity. They give out cards. I saw this just now in Florida, where they were giving out cards about the seven, it's not even one on a Chabad bus, the seven things all humanity is obligated to do. Believe in the one God, not to murder, not to steal, to set up courts of justice, to have certain basic sexual proprieties. They hand out these cards to anybody. Yes, that's what Jews should be doing. That's exactly right. One group thinks this way. And so I give them a lot of credit, but they're obviously a minority. As for secular reform and conservatism, it's not ethical monotheism, it's social justice. One of you came over to me just right before this service, who's here with his son, I believe. Son, was thrilled with what he had heard here, young son. And he said he wanted to have his son bar mitzvah at a conservative synagogue, and the first session with the rabbi was about social justice. Now, is Judaism against social justice? First of all, Judaism doesn't have a term for social justice. It has a term for justice. So I never like adjectives added to good things, like people's democracy. I believe in democracy, but not people's democracy. I believe in justice, not social justice. Whenever there's an adjective, I get very suspicious of what the agenda is. I do. There's justice. Judaism believes in justice. One aspect of justice is in Exodus, you cannot favor the poor man in a dispute. Social justice, you favor the poor man. Justice, you do what is just. So and that's why the politicization of so much in Reform and conservative Judaism, where the rabbis think they're talking Judaism when they're talking politics. Politics, which is no different from exactly what is being said, incidentally, at a liberal Protestant congregation or a liberal Catholic congregation. So why be Jewish? If Judaism is social justice, who needs Judaism? That's exactly what their children conclude and do in fact assimilate. So what should we do? We should be advocates in our lives of the God that we affirm on Yom Kippur, the God we should affirm every day, without whom you're not going to have a good society. This society has a trinity, as you know, I keep teaching, of liberty in God we trust and e pluribus unum. Jews are the most active in removing in God we trust from American life. Let's face it. We're offended by it. Prayer in school, in God we trust on our coinage, Christmas tree at a school. I mean, I debated a law professor who said it was offensive. I'll never forget. It was a non-Jew law professor from Indiana. Had her on my show. She was a big advocate of removing the Christmas tree from the law university's main office. So they were the foyer in the main building. So I said, why do you want it removed? Who does it offend? She said, it offends non-Christians. I said, I'm a non-Christian. I'm offended by your removing it. And it was a total, we were talking like Martian and Earthling. She thought there was something wrong with me that I wasn't offended, because today taking offense you get a PhD in taking offense in the United States. People have doctorates in victimhood. No, I want mention of God. Where are you going to get your values from if not God? Where are you going to get them if not the Bible? Tell me where. Your heart? That's exactly what's happening. I know the arrogance of it. I know what is good and bad. How do you know? Because I have a good heart. Okay, that ends the issue. Your good heart. So, believe me, if Jews in 1776 thought the way they did today, they would have opposed putting the verse of the Bible of their own Torah on the Liberty Bell. Put a secular verse. It may offend American Indians or I don't know, the atheists among us. We are, whether we like it or not, we pay the price for being the chosen people. My statement to Jews is, you're a member of it, you might as well take the mission seriously. And when you do, it is powerful. I'll end with a very perfect little tiny anecdote about how to do it in your own life. And how it's easy, so to speak, if you don't live an insular life. If you lead an insular life like most Orthodox seek to do in many ways, except for work, obviously they work with non-Jews, but otherwise there's no socialization, then it doesn't work. We have to socialize as Jews. I have never in my life received anything but respect from the non-Jews that I have worked with and for my taking Judaism and God seriously. So I'll give you two stories. One or two, depending.
This episode of Timeless Wisdom will continue right after this.
We live in a time where the moment you question the narrative, you're told to stop thinking and start complying. That's why what Angel is doing matters. With eye-opening documentaries like Thank You, Dr. Fauci and RFK Legacy, Angel is willing to explore the issues others avoid. In a culture shaped by gatekeepers, Angel offers something rare, a platform for truth-seeking storytelling that isn't constrained by fear or conformity. Go to angel.com/Prager, join the Angel Guild, and watch these films today.
Now, back to more of Dennis Prager's Timeless Wisdom.
In 1980-something, I probably 87, I think it was after 5 years, the head of KABC Radio, my first radio place in L.A., calls me into his office, George Green, a wonderful man. He said, Dennis, I don't understand something. He never called me into his office. I thought I was going to be fired because I was never called in. Dennis, it's not about your job. I want to ask you something. I don't understand why I never received one piece of anti-Semitic mail about you. I said, why do you say that, George? He said, every show you announce somewhere, some point you're a Jew. Frequently that you're practicing or religious, not Orthodox Jew. I never got one anti-Semitic piece of mail. But the woman that preceded you was the host. And I can tell you, I'll tell you her name because it's not bad about her. But I have to tell you her name because it's so not Jewish. Carol Hemingway. So the woman who preceded you was Carol Hemingway. Never said she was a Jew once. Nobody would think it from her name. And I kept getting anti-Semitic mail about her. I don't understand. And I said, I do. Non-Jews trust Jewish Jews more than they trust non-Jewish Jews. And he thought about it, thanked me for stopping by. But that's the truth. That's the truth. If we live our mission, we will make a better world. And let me give you a selfish reason, a self-serving reason to take the mission of spreading ethical monotheism seriously. The more successful we are at it, the less likely we are to be killed. In one sense, just one, I totally blame the Nazis. Totally. But in one sense, we failed. We didn't spread our values to the non-Jewish world in which we lived for 2,000 years. So we don't spread our values and then are shocked when we get hurt. Sorry, doesn't work. You know who accepts our values the most in America today? Religious Christians. That's who. They are the closest to us in values. Not to the secular Jew who believes social justice is Judaism. That's a different group that is most close. But the ones who support Jews the most are the religious Christians who have been most influenced by our Torah. So we even have a selfish reason to take it seriously. And this, I promise, is my final story and my final comment. I was a student in England, my third year in college. God shone his countenance upon me, and my flat, what they call flat, my apartment that I had, the student apartment, I was supposed to share one big room with another person. He lived with his girlfriend all year. I had a big flat to myself. I almost never saw him. One Saturday, I was lying in bed, in my clothes, just resting because it was Shabbat, lying in my bed reading. He comes into the room, and he says, "Hey, Dennis, are you sick?" And I said, No, I'm just resting here. It's my Sabbath. Your Sabbath? You believe in God? So help me God, this is how it happened. And I knew he was a physics major, and of course found the idea of God preposterous. So I was prepared, and he goes, Dennis, please, what's God? So knowing he's a physics major, I said, well, God is the only absolute in a universe of relativity. And he said, And I want you to know, it is the single, in a lifetime of being a public figure, it was probably the single most effective statement I ever personally made about what the whole purpose of the Sabbath is. Jews sing this, know it by heart, but never take it seriously. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, and the children of Israel will observe the Shabbat l'dorotam barit olam. Throughout their generations, it is a covenant forever. Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael, between me and the children of Israel, ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim v'et haaretz. It is a sign between me and the children of Israel that in 6 days God created heaven and earth. Ubayom hashvi'i shavat ve'inafah. And on the seventh day he rested. When the Jew keeps Shabbat, he announces to the world that there was a creator. That's a good thing to announce. So we are a messenger who forgot his message, and Yom Kippur is a perfect day to remember it. Thank you.
Tomorrow on Timeless Wisdom with Dennis Prager.
Why are we made to feel like freaks if we need sex? I mean, hey.
Who's making you feel? Wait.
Too. That's how we feel love.
No. Okay. There are three separate issues. But let me take who God forbid is making you feel like a freak. Me?
My husband.
Oh, okay.
Join us tomorrow to hear more on Timeless Wisdom with Dennis Prager. This has been Timeless Wisdom with Dennis Prager. Visit DennisPrager.com for thousands of hours of Dennis's lectures, courses, and classic radio programs, and to purchase Dennis Prager's Rational Bibles.
We live in a time where the moment you question the narrative, you're told to stop thinking and start complying. That's why what Angel is doing matters. With eye-opening documentaries like Thank You, Dr. Fauci, and RFK, Legacy, Angel is willing to explore the issues others avoid. In a culture shaped by gatekeepers, Angel offers something rare, a platform for truth-seeking storytelling that isn't constrained by fear or conformity. Go to angel.com/Prager, join the Angel Guild, and watch these films today.